Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Here in South Carolina, we really don't have snowfall very often. And if perchance we do, it's usually not very heavy, and it only lasts a day or two, and then it's gone. Instead, we have pine pollen season. Our world isn't covered in white, it's covered in yellow-green pine pollen. In fact, I'm surprised that our parents didn't describe the hard times they had growing up as walking 2 miles to school uphill both ways in the pine pollen. The truth is that for much of our country, a white Christmas is seldom the case, and yet every year we listen to and cling to the song that describes it. It has become a tradition. We do love our Christmas traditions. In fact, even though its roots are thoroughly Christian, Christmas has become largely a secular holiday. A good example of this might be the elderly lady I once knew who had developed a relationship with an elderly man. He brought her a Christmas present, even though he was Jewish. When we are ready to publish the December newsletter and I'm looking for Christmas clip art to include, my internet search has to specify that I'm looking for religious Christmas images and not Santa Claus or reindeer or snowmen. In fact, the day has become so secular that sometimes I worry that some of the real religious roots of our traditions have become lost. That's going to be the focus for this week. We'll look at some Christmas traditions to see the meaning behind them that we've forgotten or perhaps never even knew. Today, let's talk about celebrating Christmas on December 25th. Here's the truth. No one knows exactly on what day Jesus was born in Bethlehem. There are legends and stories that you might have heard about pagan celebrations that happened in late December and that the church was looking for something to offer in place of those, and so it was decided to celebrate Christmas then. Well, that may have been part of it. I don't know. But I do think there's tremendous value in having Christmas fall so near the winter solstice. Just to remind you, the winter solstice is that point when the tilt of the earth means that the sun is at its lowest on the horizon. So as we approach the winter solstice, the days are getting shorter and shorter, and after the winter solstice, each day there is more and more light. So it actually seems to me to be a powerful statement of faith that God's light comes into our world when it is the time of the most darkness. When we most need light, God's light comes. As bleak winter begins, the fullness of God comes among us. I think that's a good reason to celebrate Christmas on December 25th. Then we also need to talk about the vernal equinox. The winter solstice marks the first day of winter. The summer solstice is its opposite, marking the first day of summer. However, there are also the equinoxes that are the first days of spring and fall. The spring equinox is called the vernal equinox, and it marks the beginning of the season of life and new birth. Trees and flowers burst into leaf and bloom, animals have their offspring, and life just seems to burst out everywhere. Amidst that bursting forth of life, ancient church leaders began to consider that perhaps that was the time when Mary became pregnant with Jesus. 9 months later puts you in late December. So Christmas could be celebrated on December 25th as a celebration of God bringing life to the world. So at this point we might ask, what does the Bible tell us about when Christmas was? Not much. But if we pay attention to the Gospel of Luke, it says very clearly that the shepherds were in their fields at night tending to their sheep. Shepherds regularly watched their sheep during the day and at night kept them unwatched in corrals. The only time they were out there with their sheep in fields at night was during the time of lambing, which happens in the spring. So the time was likely in the spring, and in fact, one early suggestion for celebrating Christmas was May 20th. If we did that, if we celebrated Christmas in the spring, well, we just might have a pine pollen yellow-green Christmas after all. In the Gospel of John, it says of Jesus, "In him was life, and the life was the light of all people." You know, when Christmas isn't really important. That Christmas is. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.